Similar, we're a new story in this space. We've made a new discovery just outside of Kalgoorlie, which is one of the premier mining districts in the world, and it's been a long journey for the company. We were operating in Ivory Coast, but we've made the shift back to WA with great success. I'll go through a little bit of the backstory. We're in Ivory Coast, which is a kind of emerging market for gold exploration. We had a large footprint there, but in the background we had this asset in Australia we called Rebecca, and I always liked it, but we didn't have the firepower to do two things at once. And it wasn't until 2017 we put our first drill hole into the core of what was a long-running target at Rebecca. That's what the core looked like. It ended up having 40 or 50 metres at 4 or 5 grams per tonne gold. It changed everything, so we've moved on from West Africa and into WA. And just looking at that share price graph there, that's the difference between operating in Ivory Coast back in the 2016 days to our current sort of share price and market response. We really haven't changed the capital structure since. So we're quite nicely situated. We're trading at about a market cap of about 40 million. That's on the value of the ounces that we can see in the ground already. We have about $6 million in treasury still, and we have some retained assets in Ivory Coast, which are worth about $7 million in today's pricing on the market. This is actually quite heavily weighted to geology. I'll just skim through it, but we're 150 kilometres to the east of Kalgoorlie, and at the southern end of a really well-known gold belt called the Laverton Tectonic Zone. We're about 60 kilometres from the nearest producing asset at Carosue Dam, and the aim of this company is to take it from a discovery to our own standalone asset. There's a fair bit of infrastructure around us. There's a haul road that heads out further to the east, just to the north of us, goes through Pinjin. So we're in a really well understood, well-known district. Kalgoorlie can supply everything that a mine would need. Permitting and licensing is exceptional. I won't dive too deeply into the geology. It's a project that we inherited with a good database of mineralisation in the Duke and Redskin properties, which are the southern end of that folded belt of greenstones, and the hot colours there are mafic rocks, etc. Cold colours are granites. But there was very little exploration in the northern part of the belt, and that's because there's a bit of soil cover on top. It's hard to explore. And we essentially followed mineralisation and followed strike into this prospect at Rebecca, and you can see some of the initial hits into Rebecca. It changed everything. So there's in red some of the better intercepts in this discovery. It's partially diamond drilling, partially just RC drilling, but you can see this in downhole widths up to 50 metres of mineralisation, 4 grams, etc. It's an exceptional discovery. They don't come along very often at that sort of width and and grade, and it's forming up to be a curved surface of about 300 metres strike in that what we call the Jennifer Lode. The guys that know the business and the mining engineers amongst us and the people that follow the story in Australia recognise that that position in its isolation will be mined by someone. Those sort of grades and widths do not stay in the ground. What we're doing at the moment is building on that first surface, heading northwards. You can see the yellow lines there. That's where we've added or are adding more volume to this discovery. That's another view of it. You can see it's got quite a lot of curved shapes. It's actually really interesting. It's folded folds, so it's got a lot of complex geometry. It makes it interesting to drill in terms of where the mineralisation is going, but it does add plenty of potential for hidden and blind lodes between our drill holes. I hope this works. Actually, that's a bit of a view looking at 3D of the leapfrog model of the three surfaces. So you can see the Jennifer Lode is the one that's in white there. It's a strange baseball-shaped blob of mineralisation, but you can see the colours on the drill holes there. There's a lot of gold around. So we only partially defined all of these surfaces, and it's a small part of one prospect, and the remaining prospects are essentially under-tested. So There's a long section. We have no mineralisation, no drilling, I should say, north or south of this long section, and we've got plenty of targets downwards below existing discovery. Great looking core again, a couple of sections through the deposit. We see that these shapes lend themselves to open pit mining, and the grades will drive commerciality. We have one drill rig operating at the Rebecca discovery, and it'll stay there. A second drill rig is coming shortly to start work on the southern projects at Duke and Redskin. Very similar looking mineralisation. The geometry is again suitable for open pit mining. We know we can build ounces here. So we're on to a live discovery. There's not very many of these around. It's an exceptional example of one in terms of its grade profile. The grade at Jennifer drives commerciality. It will get dug up by someone. We intend to do it ourselves. So we're in the process of really gearing up our exploration work. We've got plenty of funding to drill this thing out, and we'll keep doing so. For current investors, we'll be getting a lot of news coming in through the course of the remainder of the year as the drill rigs work through. The other part of the story in Apollo is that we have some shares that we've inherited through our West African assets. There's about $7 million worth today that we're going to give to shareholders as an in-specie distribution next month, and that's equivalent to about a 3.5 cent dividend at today's prices. On a 22-cent share. So that's quite handy. We keep 20% of that project for the journey, and while the Exore company explores it, they've got plenty of money themselves. We're carried to decision to mine, which is a very substantial asset. And then we've also got a royalty on a 430,000 ounce resource that was owned by Newcrest, but it's just recently been purchased by Roxgold. And I suspect that in the coming 18 months there'll be news about this thing being mined. So that's us. It's a growth story. We're at the point where we're underpinned by the ounces we've found. We're going to be drilling hard for the remainder of the year and into next year, and by then we'll have enough ounces on the page to quantify and start talking to commerciality. So it's a company to watch and a growth story.